I did a video a couple of years ago. Hold on. Got a fan in the background. I did a video a couple of years ago on how to install a tub deck mounted faucet. This would apply also if you had a tub that had a rim that was wide enough to facilitate one of these. Some of them are, some of them aren't, but you have to be very careful drilling the holes at a certain point. Some are actually welded. The 3 holes, you don't have a choice on where to put them. In this case I do, because they're independent. They're not welded together as the body, as it were. The body is welded together and you're relegated to those holes. So if you drill into the edge of a tub and you get the holes wrong, you're buying a new tub. But this is a little more forgiving. The pieces that are in here are independent, as I said. So these are the valves, off and on valves. And then eventually we have the faucet for the tub deck. This gets a little complicated. I don't know that this is a DIY project. If you have some aptitude with as far as putting things together, and then of course the instruction sheet comes with it, it probably is. A plumber would typically get anywhere from, depending on what part of the country you're in, a couple $100 to $500 to maybe $800 to put one of these in for you. So it's probably worth it if you're trying to save some money. But again, you have to have a mechanical aptitude to know what you're doing here. But it is relatively easy, as these have come along, in my opinion anyway, from just 10 years ago. They have made this very user-friendly. So I know it looks complicated, a lot of parts in here, but honestly, it's really easy, and I'm going to go through the process. Before I do, I posted a video about a month ago, on CPVC pipe. And in that video, I talked about how horrible CPVC is because it gets brittle and it cracks. So there are some people, plumbers out there, that will say, well, you stress the pipe and you're going to have a weak spot. In my opinion, this whole pipe is a weak spot. Like, I have absolutely no use for it whatsoever. In that video, I showed how easily, or how brittle and how easily these are cracked with just a little stress. In fact, I was very, very careful replumbing this and doing the transition back to copper, which I show in that video. I'll post that video link down below in the description box, probably at the end of the video. Also, there'll be a little link at the very end of this video. So I go through the process of showing how to transition to copper, which I did here, and I'm going to anchor these because they're kind of loose right now, but I'm going to anchor these down before I get started. But to give you an idea, I think both of these cracked so easily. There are pipe cutters specifically for plastic pipe, and it's a ratchet type cutter. This stuff should cut very easily and clean, and if I can do this with one hand, let me show. Okay, see how clean that is? Very, very easy to cut. Normally, when this stuff gets old, that's what I end up with. I end up with cracked pipe everywhere I cut. In fact, I probably spent the good part of about 2 hours. In fact, that one on the left used to come out and elbow out also, and I cracked it so many times. In fact, I think this was it. That every time I went to cut it with those, as slow as I went, I would end up with cracked pipe. And it doesn't take a cutter to do that. You know, some extra movement, or, you know, pushing up against the wrong area could beget this. And if this busts, you're in a lot of trouble. So my suggestion, if you have old CPVC pipe, say longer than about 20 years, I would consider swapping it out and putting copper in, or PEX. And I don't like PEX either, but I think PEX would even be better than this. In fact, I know it would be better than this. So anyway, that's enough of that diatribe. But I thought it was very important to show you. In fact, I could cut this again and you'll see it'll crack again. Really have no use for it at all. So the way these are done, I built this deck from scratch, put Durock on top of it, and then I drilled the holes through the wood. I think there's 3/4 inch wood here, 3/4 inch wood, 1/2 inch Durarock, and then about a 1/4 inch tile along with some thin set. There is a parameter, I believe it's 1.5 inches on the directions it tells you. It's about 1.5 inches that you have to play with. So you have to be sure you're within that parameter. In fact, the boards that run along here are 2x6, and because the 2x6 and the plywood and the Durarock and the tile won't work, I had to cut a little portion of that 2x6 out in order to make those work. So I've laid all these parts out so you can get an idea. When you get yours, you probably have these parts separate. This part here actually comes off, but I'm not going to take it off. That goes on the very top. But the reason that comes off, you'll see later, these actually slide up under. So without that being there, this will go up under the hole like that. And then you have some playroom. Again, the playroom is down in this section here, so you can loosen that nut down to the area that you actually want to bottom out. And when I say bottom out, that will be that part of the nut. That is definitive. That bottoms out completely. And then the difference is taken up by this nut that I'm turning now. And it has a washer. It has a gasket. And at the very top of this part, you see there's another gasket. So you have 2 rubber gaskets that keep it watertight. And basically I'm going to bottom out here. That'll give me enough bite on these threads to get this top part on. And I will show you that finished product momentarily. In the meantime, you see I've already put these supply hoses on here. So basically what you have the same basic setup on here. This part goes up through the bottom, that part comes off, and it's got the same type of washer, it's got the same type of rubber gasket at the top and at the bottom with this washer and this nut, so it works in the same way. So this is basically how it's going to be set up down below. With this right side, this left side, which will be hot and cold, and then this is a centerpiece, which will be your tub faucet eventually. These larger supply lines are braided and they're also flexible. These are going to go between the hot and the cold and the tub faucet itself. So you have one for each side. Imagine that being a much shorter piece, right? You can actually turn these almost in a knot, really, but it's going to go from here to here. Then you have another line to go from here to here, and then your bottom on both your hot and your cold are your supply line, which that end right there, 1/2 inch supply, screw right on the bottom of there, and basically you're done. At that point, all you have is your top 2 faucet. You see there's a little Allen wrench key thing, and so when you turn this down, it has threads and also a washer. And when you turn this down on those top threads, which will be the top of here that's going to be exposed from the top of there, that bottoms out on it. And then you take your Allen wrench they supply and you tighten down the handle where you want it. And that's very directional too. You can put it on the side, you can have them in the back, wherever you decide to put them at that point. This is probably the easiest thing. This doesn't even screw down. So the O-rings are on the top of here, and when you slide this inside, that becomes your watertight seal. And then you also have the Allen wrench locking nut, and with a different size key. And that's all there is to it. I know it looks complicated. I know there are some people, oh by the way, it comes with a little cap. And that cap is, once you have the faucet set in place, you put that cap inside of there. So it's really, really easy. It'll probably, without filming, it would probably take me about 10 minutes or less. With filming, it's going to take a little longer, but I will edit the video in order to speed up the process so that you'll understand. And I'll go through and I'll explain everything when I'm done here also. These are the hot and the cold valves, and they just simply slide up into the hole with the parameter of this nut until you get to the very top. Give yourself enough bite for that other locking nut on the top, which I'm going to show you momentarily. And that's about bottomed out right there, almost. that's enough room right there for my top locking nut. Once the top locking nut goes on the top, as I said, that will bottom out definitely. And then any slack that you have, use this part to tighten it up. So I've already done this side over here. Oops, where is it at? That side right there. So my top locking nut is already on. My bottom one gets tightened down until I can't tighten it anymore. But I'm going to leave it a little bit loose right now because we still have the hose to put on. And then the middle part goes in the same way. Again, bring it down almost to the end. Yours is going to vary a little bit. Of course, if you're using a fiberglass tub, you're not going to have all this depth to worry about. But most of these are designed basically the same way. That's why I said it's just got a lot easier to put these in, because back a while, maybe about 10 years ago, I would cringe when I would see one of these setups because every one used to be a little different. So what I'm doing now is putting it in the top locking nut, and in this case, because it's the tub spout that's going on here, and that's bottomed out from the top. Now you take up the difference at the bottom. And again, I don't want to tighten all this completely, which eventually we'll get some channel locks to tighten that nut. But we're going to put the hose on first because it's a very, very tight fit. And you're going to see how this hose can curl up. So it's not a big deal when you get them close to each other, but it does make it more difficult. Not going to quite tighten that all the way. So as I'm turning this and curling it, it won't kink up. Because it's a braided line, it won't kink up. Now you can turn this around to the point you can get this out of the way. I think a first shot was the best way because I still have a tub to put in here. And then basically you just replicate that with the next one. Well, this is what I was talking about with the top locking nut. It definitely bottoms out, and once that piece bottoms out, that's when you take up the difference up under there. And it goes the same way with all three, so it's really that simple. Okay, this is finished being plumbed in. As you see, it's kind of a figure 8 type configuration. I don't know if I can get enough light. I'll just leave the light alone. It's kind of a figure 8 configuration, and that's kind of, or a pretzel if you will. That's kind of how it ends up being. But you leave all these tightening nuts alone until you get these hoses done, because the braided line is going to do what it does, and you can manipulate it a little bit to get it out of the way. It's far enough out of the way for my tub install. Once these main lines are put in, then you can go ahead and tighten up your bottom nuts on all three of these, and then you can tighten up your supply lines. As you see, the hot and the cold are already plumbed in. In this case, they have a little nut down here, which is basically for, and it's got a gasket inside. Basically, if you had a sprayer or something like that, you would be able to attach a sprayer to that. But you see how I took it off with my hand? That's the first time. So be sure, if you have this little attachment nipple down at the end, that you put some pliers on there and tighten it very good. A little better than hand tight. You don't want to push that O-ring down too much. Maybe give it a small little turn. That's about all, because that will definitely leak if you don't do that. So that's as easy as it gets. You see the top locking nuts I was referring to? Those get bottomed out on the top of your surface, same as this one, because it screws in as well. All three of these go in first. Those bottom nuts go in second. Then the hoses go in, and it's really that simple. When you get to the pretty stuff, those are actually threaded. So you thread those down. I usually back off until I hear a little click, which lets me know. There it is. So that way I know I'm not going to misthread it. And you can do that hand tight as well. There's a clip. Hand tight as well. Then you can put those in any configuration you want. That's the beauty of these. If you wanted to put it like that, or like that, or front facing, it doesn't really matter, because we know we're in the off position right now. So wherever the off position is, where you put your handles at, when you go on, it's going to turn this way. And then stop. Same as this one. Just put that on. And that just slides down there by virtue of the two O-rings. It's watertight. Bottoms out, and you're done. You don't need any caulking or anything around that. It's watertight. Last thing you do is tighten that Allen. Take the Allen wrench and tighten that screw down that's on the inside of there. That'll hold it in place. And that's as easy as it gets. Now you have a tub deck mounted faucet.
I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, then subscribe. Hit that button and subscribe. I make nothing off of YouTube, so please be a Patreon member. I'm going to post a link down below to my Patreon account, and you can donate $1, $5, $10, $20 a month. Just pledge that on a monthly basis. That will help me produce more videos and content so that you can watch and learn from my channel. And donate at least $50 if you're going to call. If you're going to call for advice, donate to my PayPal, please. Donate first, and then feel free to call me or email me for advice. Otherwise, business calls only, please.